Welcome to the deep dive. We've pulled together a stack of sources today. Everything from a comprehensive guide and research papers to a study document, all centered on a really interesting topic. How traditional Chinese medicine, or TCM, looks at and handles summer heat. Summer is right around the corner. We all look forward to the sunshine and longer days, but let's be honest, that intense heat can be a real challenge.
Yeah.
What if there's ancient wisdom out there that offers practical ways to not just get through the summer, but actually feel good without solely relying on modern solutions?
Yeah, that's exactly what this deep dive is about. We're going to unpack these sources to understand the core principles behind TCM's approach to summer heat, explore the specific herbs and foods they traditionally use,
Okay.
and even see how modern science is starting to, well, look at and maybe even validate this ancient knowledge.
Our goal is to distill the most important insights from these sources and give you a shortcut to understanding how these centuries-old practices could help you stay cool and balanced this summer. So let's unpack this.
Okay, so we really need to start with the fundamental theory. In TCM's five-element system, summer is strongly connected to the fire element.
Fire. That immediately conjures up heat, energy, all that maximum yang energy, right?
Precisely. It's associated with the heart and small intestine organ systems, linked to the emotion of joy, the color red,
Red, okay.
and of course the climate of heat itself. This abundance of yang energy is, characteristic of the season.
But the sources explain that all this powerful summer energy can lead to imbalance, right? What does TCM call that phenomenon?
Yes, they call it summer heat syndrome. It's basically when the external heat and the internal yang excess kind of overwhelm the body.
And the sources outline how this shows up,
Yeah.
like both externally and internally.
They do. Externally, you see the obvious things we're all familiar with when it's scorching outside. Excessive sweating, intense thirst, dry mouth.
Yeah.
In more extreme cases, heat exhaustion or even sunburn.
The classic signs of just being too hot.
Right. But internally, that heat can manifest in ways you might not immediately link to the temperature. Things like irritability, feeling restless, having trouble sleeping or just restless sleep, mouth ulcers, digestive upset, or even eye strain and general fatigue.
So it's not just about the thermometer reading outside, but how that environmental heat affects your internal state, your balance.
Exactly. The sources highlight that summer's intense yang can actually deplete or overwhelm the body's yin.
Yin, which is the cooling, moistening part.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Cooling, moistening, resting, that aspect. So TCM's cooling strategies, as these sources describe them, are designed to restore that balance. They focus on nourishing yin, clearing excess heat from the organ systems, particularly the heart,
The heart.
which is seen as key here, promoting proper hydration and supporting the heart's overall function.
It sounds like a really integrated approach, looking at the whole picture, the season's energy and its impact inside us. Okay, that makes sense in theory. So how does TCM actually do this? What are the specific tools, the herbs and foods that the sources mention for cooling?
Well, the guide details several primary cooling herbs, things like chrysanthemum, honeysuckle, mint, and lotus leaf.
Let's start with chrysanthemum or juhua. What does the guide say about its properties? I think I saw it mentioned for eye issues.
Yes, chrysanthemum is described as sweet, bitter, and slightly cold. Its main actions relevant here are clearing heat, calming the liver, and brightening the eyes.
Brightening the eyes.
Yeah. The sources suggest it's excellent for things like eye fatigue, headaches associated with heat, or just general heatiness. They even note its potential benefit for modern-day eye strain from screens.
Oh, interesting. How much do you use?
You typically steep about 3 to 6 grams of the dried flowers.
Okay. And what about honeysuckle, jinyanhua?
Honeysuckle is sweet and cold. It's used to clear heat, detoxify, and reduce inflammation. So think skin issues that flare in the heat,
Right.
sore throats, or maybe early signs of infection. The sources even make a connection to helping with air pollution exposure, which is interesting.
Huh. And the amount for that one?
For tea, you'd use about 6 to 12 grams.
Mint, bohea. That's one we're probably more familiar with.
Absolutely. Mint is described as acrid and cool. It's great for dispersing heat, promoting circulation, and it has that obvious refreshing quality.
Definitely.
Useful for mental fatigue in the heat or mild digestive upset. You can just use fresh leaves in drinks, or maybe 3 to 6 grams dried for tea. Pretty easy.
And lotus leaf. What's its specialty?
Lotus leaf is bitter and neutral to cool. It's specifically highlighted for clearing summer heat, promoting urination, and interestingly, the sources link it to supporting weight management.
Weight management.
right?
Really?
Yeah.
So if you feel heavy or notice some water retention in the heat, this could be useful. You'd steep about 6 to 15 grams of the dried leaf. The sources also list some supporting herbs, right, for more specific heat symptoms.
That's right. Things like reed root for nausea caused by heat or imparator root if heat is leading to nosebleeds. More targeted uses.
Okay, moving on to foods then. The sources provide a really useful breakdown here.
They do. Let's start with fruits.
Let's dive into the cooling fruits first. Watermelon, Xigua, seems like an obvious one, but what's the TCM perspective?
Well, watermelon is sweet and cold. It's a classic for clearing summer heat, promoting urination, and instantly relieving thirst.
Makes sense.
And the guide points out its modern benefit as a natural electrolyte replacement, which is probably why we crave it so much in the heat.
Totally.
And you can even use the rind in soups or make a tea from the seeds, apparently.
The rind.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Cucumber huanghua is another one that feels intuitively cooling.
Yes, sweet and cool. It clears heat, helps detoxify, and promotes hydration because, it's around 95% water. Good for skin health, too.
How do they suggest using it?
Eat it with the peel, or, as the sources mention, you can even use it topically for sunburn relief.
Ah, okay, Now, for grains and legumes, mung beans, ludu, are really highlighted as a star.
Yeah, mung beans.
I've heard mung beans mentioned in this context before. What's the deal with them?
They are sweet and cold, excellent for clearing heat, detoxifying, and supporting the liver. The sources point to their modern benefits.
Uh-huh.
High in protein, fiber, antioxidants.
Mm-hmm.
There's even a traditional cooling soup made from them called ludu tang.
Ludu tang. Got it. And Job's tears, yirin.
Job's tears are sweet, bland, and cool. They're particularly good at reducing dampness, that heavy feeling, clearing heat, and supporting digestion.
Okay.
It's noted as a gluten-free grain alternative with anti-inflammatory properties, too.
Good to know. Finally, cooling vegetables. Bitter melon, kugwa, is on the list.
Yes.
Bitter melon certainly sounds cooling because it's bitter. Is that the idea?
It is bitter and cold. It clears heat and can actually help improve appetite in the heat, which sometimes flags, right? And it also supports blood sugar balance. Interesting.
The sources note it's rich in vitamin C and supports metabolic health. You can stir-fry it or juice it, though the bitterness, it takes some getting used to for some people.
I bet. And winter melon, dongua.
Winter melon is sweet and cool. It clears heat, helps reduce swelling, promotes urination, very low in calories, high in water content.
How is it usually prepared?
It was typically used in clear soups or steamed, quite light. What's fascinating here is seeing how specific the thermal properties and actions are for each of these ingredients. It really guides their traditional uses to counter that summer heat.
Yeah, it's not just random. Now, this guide isn't just sticking to ancient knowledge. It actually brings TCM into the modern world with modern TCM fusion recipes.
Right, which is great, showing how you can bridge that ancient wisdom with modern convenience and, taste preferences. The sources give recipes like a watermelon cucumber mint cooler.
Oh, that sounds good.
Yeah. Combining 3 powerful cooling ingredients, maybe even adding green tea for extra antioxidants. Or I saw a 5-flower iced tea fusion, taking a traditional blend and adding something like coconut water for those modern electrolytes.
Exactly. And a chrysanthemum goji glow smoothie, balancing cooling chrysanthemum with nourishing goji berries.
That sounds delicious. And food recipes, too.
They even offer food recipes like a mung bean and lotus root salad, which is a more contemporary way to enjoy those cooling ingredients, or even a bitter melon and egg fusion frittata.
Or frittata.
Yeah, making a traditional cooling vegetable perhaps more approachable for Western palates.
These recipes really highlight how easy it could be to weave these principles into what you're already eating every day.
And the guide takes that integration even further, looking at lifestyle adjustments. It suggests aligning your daily rhythm with the sun's energy, but also, importantly, respecting the most intense heat.
So, like waking up early, but maybe avoiding being out in the peak heat, gentle exercise before it gets too hot, having cooling breakfasts.
Exactly. Then resting during the midday heat, roughly, say, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., having light cooling lunches, saving more gentle activities for the evening after 5 p.m., and finishing the day with cooling dinners.
It's about working with the heat of the day, not constantly just fighting against it.
Precisely. And the sources get practical, offering modern workplace adaptations like keeping cooling teas at your desk, having those cooling snacks handy, or even using a bit of peppermint oil for a quick refresh or stress relief, or simple travel tips like packing herbal tea bags.
Makes sense.
They even touch on urban challenges, on high high air quality alert days, focus on indoor cooling and maybe those detoxifying herbs. On high humidity days, lean on things like Job's tears to help reduce dampness and support digestion.
And simple stuff too, right? Like clothing.
Yeah, simple things like choosing natural, light-colored, loose clothing and trying fans before you immediately crank the AC. Just finding those natural cooling methods first.
It's one thing to talk about this traditional wisdom passed down for centuries, but what about the science? Do these sources actually include any modern research?
This is where it gets really interesting. Yes, they do. Recent studies are actually starting to provide some objective validation for traditional TCM concepts, particularly around the thermal properties of foods.
Oh, really? Like what?
For instance, one study in 2021 looked at the correlation between TCM's cold and hot food classifications and their chemical makeup.
Okay.
They found that foods classified as cold tended to have higher water content and more anti-inflammatory compounds, while hot foods had more lipids and compounds that increase metabolism.
Wow.
They even suggested this thermal classification might relate to how foods affect inflammatory responses in the body.
So it might not just be a subjective feeling. There could be a biochemical basis for these ancient ideas. That's pretty cool.
Exactly. Another study in 2020 analyzed nutritional components and found that 18 different components significantly influenced whether a food was classified as cold or hot in PCM.
18?
Yeah. They even identified key factors like vitamins B6, folate, and vitamin A. They were able to develop models that could predict a food's thermal property based purely on its nutritional profile.
That's fascinating, sort of quantifying the ancient classifications.
And a third study, also in 2020, used direct cellular temperature measurement. This is amazing. They exposed cells to extracts from cold versus hot herbs and found measurable temperature changes in the cells themselves, providing objective support for the idea that these substances have distinct thermal effects right down at a cellular level.
Okay, that's really compelling evidence. What about the specific herbs we talked about?
Yeah, beyond the general thermal properties, specific herbs mentioned earlier are also getting scientific attention. Studies validate chrysanthemum's anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties, its benefits for eye health, and its traditional use for liver cooling.
And mung beans, are they validated too?
Yes, mung beans have proven antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, and diuretic effects. Research even suggests they might help cells cope with thermal stress.
And honeysuckle.
Honeysuckle has demonstrated antimicrobial activity and contains anti-inflammatory compounds. Studies support its traditional use for reducing fever.
It's pretty powerful to see modern research starting to catch up with and echo this ancient understanding.
Absolutely. But, with any powerful traditional practice, safety is crucial. The sources dedicate a significant section to guidelines and contraindications.
Right. So things like finding reputable suppliers, choosing organic, proper storage, kind of the basic safety measures.
Right. They also emphasize starting with small doses, paying attention to your individual response and constitution, how your body typically reacts, and adjusting practices based on the specific weather conditions, day to day.
Okay.
A really important point is caution during pregnancy and nursing. Many cooling herbs should be used sparingly or avoided altogether during these times.
Good to know.
Also, if you have a cold constitution already, meaning you tend to feel cold, have poor digestion, or experience loose stools, cooling herbs might actually worsen those symptoms, so they should be used very cautiously.
That makes sense. Are there specific cautions for the herbs we discussed earlier, like chrysanthemum or mint?
Yes, the sources list them. For chrysanthemum, caution if you have severe digestive weakness or chronic loose stools, or if you're on blood pressure medications.
Right.
Honeysuckle should be used with caution if you have severe kidney disease or loose stools, and it has potential interactions with anticoagulant medications, blood thinners.
Right.
Mint might worsen symptoms if you have GERD, acid reflux.
Oh, okay.
And bitter melon should be avoided in therapeutic amounts during pregnancy, and caution is needed if you're on diabetes medications because it can potentially lower blood sugar.
Lots to consider there.
Definitely. This raises a critical question. When should you reach out for professional help? The guide recommends consulting a TCM practitioner for complex or chronic conditions, getting a proper constitutional assessment, needing customized herbal formulas, or just when you want ongoing guidance and monitoring.
And critically consult a medical doctor, right? For serious symptoms.
Absolutely. Consult your MD for any serious symptoms like high fever, severe dehydration, suspected heat stroke, or if you have chronic medical conditions that require conventional management. Any questions about potential drug interactions should go to your doctor or pharmacist. And of course, any emergency situation needs immediate medical attention.
That's vital.
The sources also list signs that you might need to stop using something or adjust your approach, things like severe digestive upset, any allergic reaction, significant changes in blood pressure or blood sugar, unusual or unexplained fatigue, or any other concerning new symptoms. Basically, listen to your body.
Always good advice.
The guide finishes with some fantastic quick reference sections, too, for daily management and planning.
Like clear DOs and avoids for different times of the day during summer. That sounds useful.
Exactly. For morning. De-wake early, do light exercise before the heat builds, have a cooling breakfast and drinks, avoid intense exercise or heavy warming foods.
Okay.
For midday, do rest and shade or AC, have a cooling lunch and teas, avoid direct sun, heavy meals, ice-cold drinks. TCM often views those as disruptive to digestion and overexertion.
Then evening?
For evening, DO gentle activity later, have a cooling dinner, maybe prepare cooling teas for the next day or take a cool shower. Avoid late heavy meals, alcohol, screens right before bed, and staying up too late.
So practical steps to align your whole day with the heat cycle.
Right. It also provides immediate actions for emergency heat relief. Move to shade immediately, sip water, use cool cloths, loosen or remove clothing, and rest. And suggests natural remedies like watermelon juice or mint tea for quick cooling.
Good emergency tips.
Yeah.
And planning ahead.
Yeah, the guide even helps with planning ahead, like batch cooking, cooling soups, making cooling tea ice cubes, keeping fresh cooling ingredients stocked, and suggests a shopping list of essential cooling foods and herbs.
Makes it easier to implement.
And it includes a section on understanding your constitution, which we touched on briefly. In TCM, your constitution is your unique underlying energy pattern, and summer heat affects people differently based on this.
So how do you figure that out?
Well, the guide gives signs to help you figure out if you tend to run hotter or colder. Signs you might need more cooling include feeling hot, even in cool places, having a red face or eyes, irritability, strong thirst for cold drinks, constipation, or restless sleep.
Okay.
Signs you might need less cooling or that maybe cooling practices are too much for you include feeling cold even in warm weather, paleness, fatigue, poor appetite, loose stools, or feeling worse after having cold things.
That helps you personalize everything we've discussed. What does a balanced state feel like according to this?
A balanced state would feel like, comfortable body temperature, good energy levels that feel right for the season, a clear mind, regular digestion, and sleeping well. The guide really emphasizes listening to your body to find your specific balance.
That makes sense. Finally, the sources list resources for further reading and finding practitioners.
Yes, recommending foundational books if you want to dive deeper, like The Web That Has No Weaver or Healing with Whole Foods. Useful starting points.
Good recommendations.
It also points to professional organizations like NCCA-OM and AA-OM to help you find qualified practitioners and mentions online databases and places to source herbs and ingredients responsibly.
Right.
It's worth noting that these resources and the guide itself reflect information updated fairly recently, incorporating both this ancient wisdom and referencing research studies from recent years, really blending tradition with modern investigation.
Wow, that was a really comprehensive deep dive. From the fundamental five-element theory, understanding what summer heat does to your body, to specific herbs and foods, practical modern recipes and lifestyle tips, and even seeing how science is starting to validate some of these ideas, this source offers a pretty complete picture.
It really does. It highlights how practical and relevant traditional systems like TCM can be for everyday challenges. It's not just about surviving the heat. It's more about working with the season's energy to maintain a deeper sense of balance.
Yeah, exactly. And seeing that modern research start to find objective evidence for these thermal properties, at a chemical or cellular level, that really adds a compelling layer to the conversation, doesn't it?
It absolutely underscores the value of looking at things from multiple perspectives, bridging that ancient wisdom with contemporary understanding. It's fascinating stuff.
So as you head into the warmer months, perhaps think about incorporating some of these traditional cooling principles. What resonates most with you from this deep dive?
Maybe consider this. If traditional systems like TCM have these practical, observable effects that modern science is now starting to explain at a chemical or cellular level,
Rough.
well, what other ancient wisdom traditions might hold valuable insights just waiting for us to rediscover and understand through a contemporary lens?
That's a powerful thought to leave with. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.